the coolest looking, but arguably one of the worst skin of all times is now in Call of Dragons, and today we will look over how much power will you realistically need to gain to get this skin in the server that TFS is currently in, which includes obviously some of the biggest alliance in the entire game, as well as why is this skin actually so bad and who will actually go for it or not. Hey everyone, Zoraz here, Not Casual. So today we're going to talk about the Great Heights skin. So the first thing we're going to look at is, of course, the quantity of massive whales that are currently on this server. We have TFS, which is the #1 alliance at 16 billion power, which has obviously some of the biggest whales in the game. And we have EIS, which is a pretty high, I think, top 5 biggest alliance in the game, as well as BXS, which is also pretty high up there, a bit lower than the other two, of course. But in general, we do have 3 massive alliances full of whales. We also have other whales, of course, but they are not as massive as these guys, which are obviously all in the 200 million power in this stat category. And if we go down, you can see there's a lot of 100 million plus powers here, which really means that any of them could go for it and push, because for these players, dropping 30 million, 40 million power is really not a huge deal. Now, if we take a look at, for example, the Strongest Lord event and we look at the past rankings, you can tell that some of these walls go really crazy with hundreds of millions of power gained. Now, it's a little bit different for the Greatest Lord because there is more points gained than power. It's not just about the power, but still, it shows you that there are people on this server that really just don't mess around. Now, sadly, when we look at this skin, the one thing that we notice is that it's actually quite bad for the majority of players, because while it does give cavalry unique attack, which is a good stat for cavalry, cavalry are one of the worst unit in the game currently, as their use is really limited to kind of like chasing reinforcements and people that are by themselves. When we have massive ball war fighting, their use is very limited, and if they go into the ball, they insta melt to the AoE. So cavalry units, while many people do use them for a march or two, having fun chasing low ranked players, and to be honest, the majority of cav players are basically just chasing T4 for free kills, there is really not a lot more to be done with cavalry in this game currently as it stands, where most of the fighting happens in coordinated balls and bananas, as we call them, lines of defenses and stuff, where cavs have a lot less to play, as opposed to infantry that have a much more important role as the melee units of this game. Now, with all the season talents in Season T1, cavs do have a better situation than they used to be, but in any case, the reason is not that cavs are so bad, especially, but it is also that the other 2 stats that are being given here are the worst things you could possibly want in the game. So most whale players who are going to be using cavalry to a certain extent will also usually be running mage and marksman and infantry marches, maybe one of each, or maybe 1 marksman or 2 marksmen and 1 or 2 mages, because obviously that is the damage dealing units of this game. So if you're going to be using this skin, while your cav's going to be stronger, your tanks are going to lose 5% HP. So if you have a Gorish Kogel march, which is obviously amazing in this game currently, well, that march is going to lose 5% of its best stat by far, and your marksman unit also lose 5% of their HP, which is also a very good stat. HP not only boosts the amount of life you have so that you survive longer, it also makes it so that your units are more healthy for longer, meaning you do more damage for longer. So HP is the worst stat ever to lose, and you're losing it on 2 of the most played and most beneficial units in the game. Almost every well that I know has a max Syndrian Freygar. Losing 5% HP on that and their Gorish Kogel is just atrocious. So what's going to happen is that when these players who are going to be using this skin, mostly for the look, let's be honest, they're not going to be really using anything but cavs when they're chasing around having fun. But then during war, they're going to switch this skin off to this skin, which is obviously way better, or this skin, which is also way better because it boosts these specific units much more. And while this skin, you know, is going to be more for mage players and this skin is more for marksman players, they are both ultimately way better option than this skin when you're going to be doing war. If you have any march that is infantry or marksman out, you don't want this skin. And not only are you using 5% HP on your marksman, you're losing the 10% unit defense that you would be getting on your marksman. Or even if, for example, you're using a different skin like this one, which is absolutely amazing, 5% HP to your magic unit and less 5% on your calves, this for most players is a very net positive because most people don't use cav and most people do use magic, and it is HP, so it is really good. So they're not only losing the 5% HP, they're losing out on the potential 10% gain. So it's a 15% stat loss when you're using that skin for your best damage dealing marches in the game. So I'm really just not impressed with the skin stats in general. I do not think that most people are interested at all in this skin, though it is obviously not going to mean that people are not going to push like crazy for it, simply because obviously the look is really cool, but also for bragging rights and ego, most people that are massive whales, it's nothing for them to drop a few thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for the skin because they want to have all the skins for all situations. For example, when rallying with calves, putting the skin on will have a very strong impact and make your rally much stronger. So this is where some whales will have this skin specifically just for when they rally, which is a situation that happens rarely, but when it does happen, they will want to have that skin. So this is why we're going to see this skin into play, in my opinion, and people are going to go nuts for it. Now, only the top 10 players on a server can have this skin at once. So what is it going to look like when they are going to push for power? When you're thinking that some of these whales have infinite amount of monies, so it'll going to really depend on how much they want the skin. But if we take a look at previous great heights, the amount of power for these skins have usually been around 25 to 30 million in order to secure your spot in the top 10, sometimes a little bit higher than 30 million. But in general, if you're able to go for 30 million plus, you were pretty safe in that. So that means you need to gain 30 million power, which obviously is done by troops for most people, as a T5 player will be able to only gain power from troops as they have maxed out everything else on the account. And when you do look for the troop power, basically 1 T5 is equal to 10 power. So think about how many T5s you need to train to get to 40 million. Well, it is millions of T5, which is going to be obviously quite incredible and requires a ton of resources and speed ups. So this is something that is only for the mega whales, and while it is going to be tricky, as I said, when we look at the ranking here, these people are definitely able to. I know that a lot of these people have years, if not dozens of years worth of speed up saved for these kind of skins and event, and they have infinite amount of resources that they can just buy them with money and gems. So this is going to be interesting. My prediction currently, I say, on this server, considering so many people are going to go for it, as there is quite a few cav players on this server, as well as many people who just want the skin, as I said, for rallies and for ego reasons. I think on this server we might see 40 million, 50 million as the minimum to get this skin for this time. So obviously I will be covering it, so make sure to stay tuned and take a look at how much power will be needed for the biggest server in Call of Dragons to get this legendary Great Height skin. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.